warm weather, isn't it, everybody? So, welcome to the Pond House. Welcome to our last reading of the 12th season. So we're ending our season tonight. Another very successful season. We've been excited about the reading, and we do have refreshments now. So please help yourself. We have tea and we have coffee. We also have a cake. So at the end of the reading, please stay just a little bit and join us in some celebratory cake. That would be great. I want to apologize in advance for the air conditioning. The library director came over and it looked like the air conditioning was just going the direction that it should be going, but it doesn't seem that it is. So we're sorry about that. We tried a little something that we do sometimes, which is we open these doors. And so if we open these two doors here, we get a little cross breeze here. And that should be okay. Sometimes we get some street noise from over here. So if that gets to be too much, then we'll have to shut the door. So, some thanks that are in order. We want to thank the City of Milwaukie. The City of Milwaukie has been supportive of the Milwaukie Poetry Series from the beginning. And we're indebted to them. Secondly, we want to thank the Leading Library of Milwaukie. You can see what's happening. We're getting a new library. And we've been watching this, and the new library is going up. So the temporary library is about a mile up the street in downtown Milwaukie on Main Street that way. It's in a 6-wide, no, it's in a 9-wide. So if they've done a very nice job, considering it's trailers, as far as putting something together on a temporary basis. And finally, I want to thank the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. We do have a committee, and as you know, you don't have things happen unless you have a committee, and people who have worked on it. So there are 3 of us here tonight, and our art curator is here also. So would you like to stand, or would you like to just wave? Everybody's going to stay seated. Dan Hobbs and Susanna Lundgren, our art curator, Emmett Weekball. Let's give them a hand. So thank you very much for doing that, because as you know, you don't have things happen unless you have a group of people that are working on it. We do have our guest book here, so if you have not signed in on our guest book, would you please do that? We do have a broadsides of one of Shaindel's poems. So if we don't have them, I wonder if someone could pass them out. Doesn't look like people have copies of the the broadsides. I did hold up my smartphone, so if everybody could silence their smartphones, beepers, telephonic devices, that would be great. So we would appreciate it if you would do that. A bit of thanks to our videographer tonight. Our videographer, we have a new videographer tonight, Annette Wastel. So we have several people who have volunteered to do this. And in answer to Lex's observation, we have 2 mics. We have 2 mics because we have a floor mic, which is this one, which is projecting into the room. And secondly, we have a directional mic. We have a video mic. So we do record, we do get DVDs from the reading tonight, and so this is going on to the DVD. And we hope that that gives a better sound. We are learning about this because we've had to take this over ourselves, and we have learned that you can get a reading, a recording from just using this mic, but it's not as good. So we're hoping that they both work just fine. So a big thanks to Annette for doing this. I first heard Shaindel. I'm pronouncing it correctly? Shaindel. Okay. I first heard Shaindel read at a salon, Penelope Schatz. This is maybe 4 years ago. But it was about the time that her book, The Children's War, came out. Secondly, I heard her maybe a couple of years later, and she was moderating a panel at the Oregon Poetry Association conference. And both times I thought, boy, that would be nice if we had her to read. And so now we do. I've been looking forward to this, and It's my pleasure to introduce her. Shaindel's poetry, fiction, and creative nonfiction have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. She's currently an instructor of English at Blue Mountain Community College in Pendleton. So she drove down from Pendleton today, had a good trip down, and we're glad that she's here. That's in Eastern Oregon's high desert, and she serves as the poetry editor of Contrary. And there is you can look at that at www.contrarymagazine.com. She hosts the talk radio poetry show Translated By, which can be found on a blog that she does, and the citation for the blog is in the invitation, so you can look that up. This is from her book, A Brief History of Time. She has a new book out, which is available, and you can get them after the reading. Thank you for being here. So would you join me in welcoming our poet tonight, Shaindel Beers. Come on out. Yeah.
Thank you. It's amazing to see so many friendly faces here. I've been in Oregon for 13 years now, so it's really interesting to try to remember where I know everybody from. But there are so many of you that I know, so thank you for welcoming me. I do have 3 books out now. I only brought the latest book, and I'm remiss in ordering the first 2 from my publisher, so I need to do that, but I'm a big believer in libraries, so please, get them from your local library, or you can find them all over the place online. Okay, so I'm going to be reading from Secure Your Own Mask, and just thank you all for being here. Thank you for this beautiful space. This is very magical. So I'm going to start with the first poem of the book, The Imprecision of Language. And the I am in imprecision is in parentheses, so you can read it as either the precision of language or the imprecision of language. How far the ring-necked dove is from wringing a dove's neck. The way a stand of trees can hide a deer stand, concealing the hunter who will shoot the deer who will fall in the fallow fields. Once, someone who was dear to me threatened me with a deer rifle, cleaned it random times out of season when he was upset, said, I don't want to be divorced. We can make this work, while working the polishing cloth along the metal barrel of the gun. My blood barreled through my body when I would see his truck in the drive. I was never not scared to come home, to fall asleep, to say the least little thing wrong. Language became a tricky game where saying nothing meant everything, where saying everything meant nothing left to fear. I sang my sorrow to anyone who recognized the panic of birdsong, the desperation of the killdeer feigning its broken wing, anything to lure the predator from its nest. Its broken wing was strength. I shone my brokenness like a flare gun. Someone might understand the bird of my heart, always crashing against the cage of my ribs, the moth of hidden fear fluttering to escape from my throat. Once, in my Shakespeare class, I learned that brace meant a pair, a brace of kinsmen, of harlots, of greyhounds, a brace of warlike brothers. In another time, I stood at the front of the classroom in a chest brace because my husband had collapsed the cartilage between my ribs. I couldn't reach the string on the movie screen and had to ask for help. I said, I'm wearing a brace, so I can't stretch. I thought of the grimace stretching across the nurse's face when I said, "I know this sounds like domestic violence. It was an accident, just goofing around." I wrapped the Velcro belt around my ribs each morning as he ribbed me. I should have given up. What was I trying to prove, staying in a submission hold until he cracked my ribs? Was I stupid or just stubborn? I didn't know he was grooming me for greater violence. The rock thrown at me in the car, the wedding ring pressed so tight by his hand holding mine until I bled. Which brings us back to the dove, the difference between ringing, and where language leaves us when someone controls every word we say, when we have no one left to talk to. I write a lot of dark work. I heard the my goodness. I think part of the beauty of being in dark places is we get different means of escape. And so I have a few circus poems, and one of those is on the broadside that you have in front of you. Because at least when I was growing up, people still fantasized about running away and joining the circus. And I don't know if people still do that, but I'm from Indiana, the land of circus people. Like the circus museum is in Warsaw, Indiana, I think. So this is when we were knife throwers. My favorite part of the act wasn't the sparkle of red sequins, the skimming of satin skirt flirting with thigh. I loved the knife thwack, the shudder of pearl handle vibrating when the blade landed true. I loved cartwheeling in space when you spun the wheel. Our love every day a game of roulette, praying to always land on black, but wearing red just in case. I lived for you tying the blindfold, the whisper, "I love you," as you fastened the manacles secure. Each second, a precarious balance between trust and chance. And then the one that you have on your broadside, Self-Portrait as Rosenbach Rider. Because I love horses, so I think if I did run away and join the circus, I would probably be a Rosenbach rider. The arch of my foot is perfectly shaped to withers, to flank. I can stand in arabesque at a canter, sweep my back leg through, back bend, walk over, and land astride. The hardest part is the smile, the unnatural strain on the face. It is the difficulty of beauty pageant smile during athletics. The Pacifino beneath me flows like water. His walk is molasses. I give him molasses mixed with oats each night. He is sweet as sorghum. The clop-clop of his hooves is my heartbeat. Please pray the circus never separates us. This is the ringmaster's threat when the seats are empty. A horse costs so much to feed, and the lions are hungry. This is why I cry into the illustrated man's indigo skin every night. I'm really glad to see people of various ages in this crowd so that I do not have to explain who Robert Frost is. So that's very nice. So the next poem I'm going to read borrows basically a line and a half from Robert Frost's Out, Out. The title is, "And they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs." So how many of you know the poem Out, Out? Okay, quite a few of you. So it's the one where the boy is 11 years old and he is cutting firewood and cuts his hand off and dies in the poem. And that ending, "and they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs," always hit me as not being quite right, or maybe not the way we would take it. I felt like it was kind of a cold ending and didn't realize that on a farm you have to turn to your affairs because cows have to be milked and things have to be harvested. And I know that Robert Frost knows that, but something about his poem I felt like I needed to take over. And he's also an Aries, so I think he would be okay with me astrologically taking over. And they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. Every creak becomes a swinging rope, the halo of light cradling him as he hung in the barn's large doorway. The way her screams felt like they were coming from somewhere else. She remembers everything about his neck, putting her nose into the crook between head and shoulder, breathing him in the first time. All the times she worried when he would wear her necklaces, play with neckties, all her fears about that fragile stem. When he was first learning to sit up, she would put him on a blanket, watch his head follow her like a flower tracking the sun. Later, it was sunscreen and aloe. It was learning to tie a tie, then medals for track and senior keys, straightening his bow tie for prom. And lastly, the purple when the paramedics cut him down. How do the mothers go on? The ones who still see the ball chased into the street, who pass the bike helmet on the hook, dust the trophies on the shelves of bedrooms never, ever entered except sometimes. And I have a lot of suicides in poems because I feel like a lot of people commit suicide. But and I always do awkward banter. I'm sorry, that's the only kind of banter I can do. But this poem, I had a friend who committed suicide in high school because his family was going to go back to being Amish. And he couldn't imagine giving up a car and a driver's license and things that are really important when you're 16. And so as an adult, just thinking of he only had to wait and then he could have made his own decisions. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things for me to think of. So that image of hanging in the barn comes from that. I can't figure out if we should keep going dark. The reason that I thought of this next poem that I'm thinking about reading next, and I need to look at my table of contents to find it, let me see, is because Penelope's here, and this poem mentions Penelope's house. I'm trying to remember where it is. Sorry about this. Awkward pause.
It's all my fault.
It's okay. Oh, page 38. Well, I didn't know if you knew you were in the book, and I didn't know you were coming. So, and sadly, this is another suicide poem. But, and it's called When Lights Flash, Bridge is Up. And it has 2 sentences borrowed from an article, The Bridge's Long Shadow by Jane Sade. I was in the city of bridges, always nervous, always crossing water to get anywhere, the lane changes needed before the GPS voice could say them. The Morrison Bridge, the Hawthorne Bridge, the Burnside Bridge, the Steel Bridge, bridges to cross between the restaurant we'd wanted to go to and the one that was open. The bridge we'd thought we'd turned onto going the wrong way until we saw the sign facing us that said, "When lights flash, bridge is up," and we knew we were safe. I read poetry in a friend's house on the crest of a mountain, the view breathtaking. Up there, I knew the world could belong to me, even if I didn't always belong to it. She'd put a sign in the yard that said, "Poetry parking this side," and I felt that this was a world I could exist in. Earlier, on the meditative path of a solace garden, I thought of the elephants I'd seen at the zoo, the ones my son had fallen in love with, the small circle that had become their lives. But I tried to appreciate that we were there, that Liam loved them, that he wanted 2 elephants from the gift shop, Mama and Baby, because now this was his idea of elephant. When you and I talked, it wasn't so much of loss, but of what we had never had. Those parts we'd been born without. The pain passed down from pogrom to shtetl to Auschwitz. The way fury and fear were more real to us than love. That day you found a bridge of your own. You told yourself, here you are. You can decide to slip a little bit and you're gone. So I love those happy accidents. Like, I didn't know that Penelope was going to be here, but
I wish Liam were here.
it would be a very different reading if Liam were here. Let's see. So the next poem is Reality Falls Away. And I do a lot of work writing about trauma. And before I got my creative writing degree, I got a master's degree in literature from the University of Chicago. And I specialized in 19th century British horror novels because I love Dracula and Frankenstein, and I love what those novels were really supposed to be, which was like social reform novels. Like Frankenstein, at least to me, was really about all the children being abandoned at that time because of the cost of living being too high to raise them. And, you know, Frankenstein just wants a parent. You know, that's all he wants. He's not a monster. And then Dracula being various sorts of fears about Eastern European immigrants. And so I had a lot of sympathy for monsters. And with my writing about trauma, I think about how a lot of the monsters in horror novels never meant to be monsters. They were just very misunderstood. So that's where this poem comes from. Reality falls away. Reality falls away. A voice says, I've been sleeping with your husband, and hangs up. A doctor's mouth shapes the word inoperable. A gunman walks into a classroom. The world as it was before no longer exists, and you understand all the ways of ending the monster in folklore. Beheading, silver bullet, stake through the heart are acts of mercy. The monster is merely a victim who didn't know change was coming, didn't want the bloodlust, was just an actor being human, which is always a process of losing humanity, devolving into something else altogether with each cell's division, each full moon's gravity pulling blood through the capillaries, the sudden aversion to garlic, to holy water, the inability to touch silver, to stand directly in sunlight. Today, we would describe these as triggers. Something happened and now I can't. Something happened, and now I'm someone else in some other reality. If you are reading this, please scatter skeleton flowers on my grave. And do any of you know what skeleton flowers are? No, I haven't seen them in person, so this is one of those things you'll have to Google. But they're these very delicate flowers. I think originally they grew in China, and they're white normally. The petals are white, but when they get wet, they become translucent and see-through. And so I think now they actually grow wild in maybe North Carolina, but it feels humid enough here, maybe, right? Like maybe you could all grow skeleton flowers. Okay, this next poem is called Once. Once, when we were seahorses, you forgot our mating dance. I clung to the rock, to the coral, to the reeds. I let myself drift away, knew I would never again be heavy with eggs. I let the current take me where it took you. I knew one of us would always be leaving, the other letting go. Next time I came home to our apartment, empty as Eric Satie's. A piano, your black shoes in the southeast corner of the room. a lone note in the center of the small table where we shared our meals. I dropped the bag I was holding. Roadside beets and potatoes that had fallen from trucks thudded on our floor. I heard a rat scuttle in a corner. Just the words, "Run, don't try to find me." And then maybe something that looked like blood, so I'd listen. What I'm saying is this. I know this is the way it is, will always be. Someone is always a planet and someone a star. Some lives are too big for one lifetime. Listen to the sea. I'm listening. Okay, so I have a section in the book that is Pelican poems. And just for the backstory of this, I'm not a disciplined writer. I have to sign myself up for things where people make me write. So one of those is Tupelo Press does a 30-30 challenge where you have to write 30 poems in 30 days, and you actually sign a contract with the publisher that you'll give them a poem each day by a certain time. And one day I was running along the Umatilla River, and there were a bunch of pelicans, and I'm a poet, I don't really think about numbers. So I was like, that's a lot of pelicans, but I was curious enough to go back and see how many. And there were 13 of them, and it felt really serendipitous, like 13 ways of looking at a blackbird. So I thought, if I write 13 pelican poems, I'm almost halfway done for the month. I know, amazing, right? And so this beautiful water space here makes me feel like I should read a few of the pelican poems. So I'll read part 1, and then I'll skip to later in the sequence. 13 ways of looking at a pelican. 1. The lone pelican in the reeds of river's edge seemed odd. I stopped, watched, did nothing. Later in the paper, the story of its broken wing, likely caused by flying into a wire, that it would probably be euthanized. When you see a pelican alone, it usually means something is wrong, said the wildlife expert. My self-doubt that kept me from calling. Did I cause that pelican more hours of suffering, or gift it a few more hours of floating in the reeds, a little while longer to bob in the gentle current, the coolness of water over webbed feet? Forgive me, pelican. I also am always alone. Also fly too recklessly for my own good. And so the problem when you commit to writing a poem a day about pelicans is some days the pelicans are not there. So then you have to write about the absence of pelican. I'm teaching you all of the tricks there, right? It's very zen, like it's the hollowness that makes it a bowl, right? Otherwise it's not a bowl. So this is about the absence of pelicans. This is the 7th section. But what is the river without the pelicans? It is still the herons stalking minnows in the reeds, and the 2 trees where their 12 nests rest beyond the picnic pavilion. It is the osprey hovering above the river, and the Pacific Power linemen who built the new nesting platform while the osprey wintered in South America. It is the wood ducks and mallards, the flit and sea song of red-winged blackbird, the slate arrows of doves that throw themselves down to river's edge after seeds. It is otter and mink, the deer that come down from the ridge, the cattle from open range who amble down mountain on hot days. It is coho and chinook, steelhead and salmon, the train tracks which follow the river from Gibbon to Rivermouth, where one night a boy lay his head, and later in the high school gym, I hugged his mother and said, "I'm so sorry about your son." The river is every single body that has been pulled out of it. the ghosts that walk the levee. But today there were pelicans, 2 breeding pairs, so we move on. Okay, so I am going to finish with 2 new poems, new as in not in the latest book, although they're not new. But I'm at that point where this book has been out for almost a year, and so people are sort of like, are you writing anything new? And no, I'm promoting this book. It's really hard to, figure out how to do that. Books to me are a lot like babies, so I kind of feel like this one's still in diapers. Why would I be making another one? But okay. And speaking of, I guess I have these, you'll see why this is funny. The way that our subconscious works. This is called ephemera. Somewhere, a sperm is fertilizing an egg. A comet is crashing into a planet. What I am saying is these are the same event, only a difference of distance, camera angle, scale. We are the unstable particles of the universe appearing and disappearing at whim. While we were in bed becoming synapse charge and endorphin rush, the tired machinery of my friend's heart chugged to a stop. Everything is chance. To the rocks that we climbed, you and I are mayflies madly mating for our 1 month on the earth. To the wildflowers, we are gods, trampling some, sparing others, not thinking, just footfall, dumb luck. You open the wide-angle lens to take in the cliffs, the chasm that separates 2 states. I lean in so close to the honeybee that I feel the breeze from her wings. Her buzz thrums my fingers. I thank her for saving us. And then I'll close with this poem because I think we have coffee here, right? And if there's no coffee here, it's Portland. It's a coffee city.
We do have coffee.
Oh, okay. See, this is perfect. This is called The Coffee of Love, and it's another one of those poem challenges. It's from Robert Lee Brewer's Poem a Day Challenge, where he gives you a prompt, and he actually does it every Wednesday also, and I had to write a blank of love poem. So this is The Coffee of Love. The coffee brought to you in bed. The coffee on the porch as you listen to the day progress from dove song to starlings to sparrows. As you watch the steam rise from the grazing horses' backs. The 8 ounces a day you're allowed when pregnant. The dinner party pick-me-up you know will keep you awake all night. The first time a new lover asks how you take your coffee, promises to remember. The grounds and banana peels you save for the roses of the widow next door. The camping trip coffee made with water filtered from the river. The late night project coffee you pray will see you through to morning. The fellowship hall coffee after a funeral. The cup you hope will be waiting for you on the other side. Thank you.
Boy, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Do we do a question and answer, or?
Well, we do.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you if we read another poem.
Oh, okay.
It's Unfriending the Dead.
Oh, sure. And it was one of those where I was like, how many death poems can I read and not thoroughly depress
I
us?
was hoping you'd read that one.
Okay.
30 and 30 minutes.
Okay, Unfriending the Dead. They show up in the news feed, Facebook as memorial, birthday reminders, events where the guest of honor will never appear. Someone who is forgotten or who hasn't heard will leave a joyful eat cake, a copied and pasted happy birthday, even just the letters HBD in our light-speed world. Still not so far away from lost messengers in ancient times, letters gone down at sea or never delivered because of a lame horse. But others, miss you, Mama, it's been hard. This earth isn't the same without you on it. Sometimes I think about the ways we die. Cancer, car accident, suicide, 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 suicide. I think of the body hanging, the children unknowing on the other side of the door while the blood stops traveling, the cells shut down without oxygen. This is all very mechanical. It is just lights going out on a cellular level. The same way pixels spark out of my LED screen, sending their image and are then shut down. Some days I want to type, I saw your son in the school concert. He was wonderful. You would be so proud. Or, the earth misses the weight of your terrible beauty. Is this the modern way of planting flowers in a cemetery, placing stones on a grave? Is the digital world temperate or desert? Victorians must have felt this way about photographs, and before this, paintings. How are we always inventing ways to keep the dead with us? Why is it so hard to let the cursor hover over unfriend, block? How permanently to release you, to make room for more, to keep the pixels of you from my screen the way the tiny lights of your body turned out one by one by one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
For me, poetry is for the poet, from your heart to my heart. You did that twice in the reading. The first is with horses. To me, they're most, like 99% of them are just enormous teddy bears.
Right.
I just love them. And the second is my youngest stepson was killed. And mothers never, they go on, but they never go on.
Right.
And the other thing is, you speak of the fragility of love.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a quote, I keep an English comic book, I have dozens of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't remember exactly where the quote that I was looking for that would relate to what you said. So I spent a wonderful evening going through all my books, looking at all these wonderful books I've read, looking exactly for what related to what you wrote. And I found it on the last page of the last book.
Mm-hmm.
But so much of what you wrote, we are standing on the shoulders of giants. Mm-hmm. You as the poet and me as your reader. So much of what you wrote just transported me back to so many different things. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple of extraordinary references, dare I say it, to Ramona the Pest.
Oh, funny.
And she stood on the shoulders of Queen Elizabeth I's tutor. Mm-hmm. And so it just was just a wonderful exercise for me, and a wonderful evening reading your things and then realizing where all these things come from. So anyway, you cheered me up last night, so thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I wanted to ask you about it. You say you're not a disciplined writer.
Okay.
Well, and you do a blog, and you teach class. Do you prepare poems for either of those?
Well,
Do you write in spurts?
I basically make myself write. So if I'm teaching poetry writing and I give my students an exercise, I write while they're writing.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like the sleep while baby sleeps, right? Write while students write. So there's that. And then just in the summers, I'm not teaching as much. So I try to cram as much into the summers as possible. but I mean, I'm not disciplined. Like, I mean, we're in Oregon, right? We have the story of like William Stafford getting up every morning at like 4 a.m, and I'm not William Stafford. You know,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
But it was Kim Stafford, who I had the good fortune of meeting recently.
Yeah.
And despite saying hello to someone, he asked Red Talk. This is Red Town. I used to teach Red in that building, but now further down the road. And sorry I was late tonight. Yeah, and then I went to the wrong place. What was I saying?
Kim Stafford.
Kim Stafford.
Yes, then he said, well, there's this great poetry series going on, and I never knew that this existed. And I mean, about Pound House, and I missed all the other 8 months, but then like I was so excited that you were here because I don't know. A quick story of how I found out about your poetry. I was driving east on I-84, heading up to cross the bridge over the Columbia, up through Goldendale, Leavenworth, and you were being interviewed, I think, on NPR, and you read the poem Rewind.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, pull over, sit on the shoulder, write the quote down, write the title, wrote your name down, and that was my introduction to your writing. And it's been a constant ever since. So I'm sort of wandering with my ideas, but Stafford, son, got me here, and thank you for your word, because Rewind was just, that was my moment of like, wow, let me see what else you are writing, and
Yeah.
it's been such a great journey.
Oh, thank you.
And I try to give my 7th grade students confidence to just put pen to paper, and they're so afraid of doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, I haven't read the article yet. I just saw the headline, but there was some article that we're all creative geniuses and then school basically beats it out of us. And I really feel especially, and I mean, pretty much everyone here is probably old enough to remember pre-No Child Left Behind. But now the college students that are traditional age have only had No Child Left Behind. And so they're very afraid of not having the right answer. And so it terrifies them. And I don't know how to get them to be like, it's a poem, there isn't a right answer. Yeah.
Oh, there's no test.
But then they won't do it, right? Everything is. But there's a book, I think it's by Robert Bly, Rose, How Did You Get So Red? And it's, oh, it's Kenneth Koch, that's right, I'm so sorry. Yeah, Kenneth Koch. And it's for, I think, like kindergarten through 8th grade writers. And if you can get that, that's an amazing, amazing teaching tool.
And I know other secrets of, at least the helms of the bowl. I need to learn more about some of those, the things that we see but we don't notice because we're looking at the frame instead of the space.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And there was another question. Yeah.
You know, clearly listening to you read, your lines are absolutely brilliant. It's refreshing to hear the complexity of them. And to hear you work from a theme and able to branch out and make sure that they stay connected, which is always a challenge for the poet. The one question I have is that you seem to apply the same meter to all the poems. So the question then becomes, is the meter driving the diction and syntax, or is the syntax and the diction established and you're applying a contrived meter?
That's really interesting because unless I'm writing in a form like a sestina or something, I don't actually think about the meter. So I don't know. I feel like I use a lot of simple words. And even, you know, when I was in undergrad, I had a lot of professors who said, you are from a pig farm, you know, like in a town of 1,300 people. You need to work on your vocabulary because you're trying to go to University of Chicago or Yale or, well, and I mean, they meant it from a good place, but I mean, I still look up words all the time. You know, I use a lot of, you know, Hemingway words, but I mean, Hemingway is Hemingway, even though the diction is 4th grade level, the thoughts aren't 4th grade level, you know. So yeah, I don't know if part of that is there's very simple diction, and so it has that kind of meter. But yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Yeah,
Do
thank
we have
you.
any more
Oh, okay.
One more question over here.
Do you have the book, A Brief History of Time?
I only brought my latest book with me. Yeah, I need to get better about ordering copies from my publisher. Yeah, this publisher for my third book has been very generous and has just been like sending me copies of my book, and I get to keep the profits. And the other book, I have to, fork out the money and then hope that people buy them. So I haven't been as good at ordering those. But they're on Amazon. I hate to send people to Amazon, but they're very cheap there. Or, get your local independent bookstore to order it from wherever they order things from. Yeah. I do know, I know there's a copy of The Children's War that is signed at Powell's, because I was silly with my friends and went in and signed my books that were on the shelf, and no one has bought them. So it's in this small press poetry section, which is the purple if you're color coded. Yeah.
Well, before we break up, let me say something I forgot to do in the introductions, is that we are going to be back in September, so into the 13th season. So we will be, the song, See You in September. We do during the summer, First Friday readings. So we partner with St. John the Baptist, and those are at St. John the Evangelist. So those are St. John the Evangelist in the first Friday of each month. So we're going to be doing those July through October. But for those of you that came in late, we do have cake. So two things I want to say about that. Number one, please stay and have some cake. We're celebrating the end of the 12th season, and we're just delighted that we had Shaindel here, and she finishes our 12th season. Then after that, those of you who would like, we'd love to have some help putting the room back together. Because what we have to do is we have to bring out tables. They have to go in a square, and the chairs go around the tables. And the issue with that is that the library, because of the temporariness, is closing an hour earlier. So that's why we had to move to 6:30.
Mm-hmm.
So please have some cake.
Of course.
Those of you who would like, give us some help, stay and talk. There are going to be books back here. My lovely wife Jane is going to sell books, and I think you'll be available to sign them.
Of course, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, volunteers, welcome. Thank you so much.